So let's have the conversation right now. I bring in cartoonist, author, creator of Dilbert, host of the YouTube show Real Coffee with Scott Adams, the man himself. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, so let's get the big things out of the way. People who are new to the situation and have heard that one soundbite say, the guy's racist. What do you say to people who heard that and say, Scott Adams is racist? Are you?
No. In fact, I often say it would be stupid to judge people any way other than individually. You would just be hurting yourself. You'd just be cutting yourself off from, half of the good people in the world or some number. So judging people by anything other than their individual character never makes sense. And certainly I wouldn't say that.
Did you know that this was going to happen?
But Chris, I intentionally courted controversy, but it's something I do often in my live streams. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to attract attention so that I could have a productive argument. Now, there's a frame or a context here that probably almost none of your audience is familiar with, and that would really change how they see this. Could I give you a little context?
Please. That's what the whole conversation's about, Scott. Give me the context.
All right. All right, so if you knew me as a cartoonist and all you heard was the headline, you did a racist rant, and then you heard the video, there's really no other way to interpret it than the worst possible way. And I would agree with that. But if you knew me as what I'm probably had more impact on the world is some of these books, which are from philosophy to persuasion to how to deal with this situation, actually, and other online controversies and arguments. But this one's the most effective one, and this is in the domain of personal growth, personal success. So I'm actually one of the most, I would say, noted people in the field of success and the tools of success. In fact, if somebody wrote a book on success today, they would almost have to reference my work. It's pretty much pervasive in other work as well. So if you knew that my background included being a hypnotist, if you knew that I work in the self-development specific individual success field, and that I'm noted for that, and you know that I like to court controversy because that's part of persuasion, you do a little hyperbole, your energy comes to you, and then you reframe it, which is what I'll do today for your guests. Then you reframe it, and then everybody leaves happy. So that was the model. What I did not count on is that that my audience, which is they know me, so they would know what I was up to. In fact, they knew right away. As soon as I said it, my audience said, "All right, what are you doing? What kind of play is this? What's the long game?" And of course, I was explaining it to them the entire time. But what happened was it got bigger than I expected. It became a worldwide cancellation. So I had to wait a little while. Let all the noise dissipate, let the energy dissipate a little bit. And then I thought, well, this is about the time. And you're actually kind of the perfect person to talk to, because I think the audience is going to say you're not going to let me off the hook.
Well, look, so full disclosure, yeah, go ahead. But just, Scott, while you're getting whatever you want, I just want people to know, I called you because I said, I got to know why you were doing this, because I know your work and you're too smart. And I've never, ever heard you saying things that were like David Duke. And you had to know that the outcry would be huge and that the intentions would be assumed. So I had to know why you did it. Yeah. And that's why I have you on tonight. Yeah. So tell me.
Right. So obviously the hyperbole I used, get away from black people, there's no way to do that. And, I don't even recommend it. It's not really a good idea. So that's what makes it high energy. It's sort of like when Trump says, if the wind stops blowing and the windmills stop turning, your TV won't work. I'm pretty sure he knows that's not the case. But it makes everybody go, what? You're wrong, you don't understand. And then all the energy comes to him. So I've read about
I don't know that he knows that, but you do. But you do. And you're not going to get the defense that he will. With Trump, people sometimes write him off by, look, he just says things. You're a smart guy who we've all been reading and watching for years. So you knew it was going to go like this, and you still did it.
No, I knew it would go, it would create controversy in a small way, but I thought it would stay within my audience. Because my audience usually understands me and they kind of get the whole thing. So there's a reframe coming. They haven't heard yet. But the notion is that race relations are terrible. The context was that there was a Rasmussen poll, which I did not rely on for my comments, but I discussed it as a starting off point. So the Rasmussen poll said there were some alarming percentage of black Americans. It was a smallish sample, but it was still statistically within 8% of margin of error. That said that something like 26% would not say that it's okay to be white. Now, I have a problem with the question because I think everybody interpreted it differently. So we can, if you would allow me, I don't believe the poll is important to the point. So, after I talked about it, you'll see on the comments that I said the way things are going. The way things are going, the signals are blaring in every way. Social media shows an anti-whiteness bias. Businesses do, ESG, CRT, DEI, all these corporate and government things. They all start with sort of white people, which is true, were the source of racism for years. Still largely the source of continuing systemic racism, which I very much agree is a big deal, especially in the schools, especially in the teachers' unions. I think that's the worst place for systemic racism. And so you've got this entire environment, every commercial, every TV show, it's just everywhere. Now, what your audience might not know is that when I complained about black people having a bad attitude about white people, that was me saying nothing about black people. It was saying, I don't want to be around people who have a bad feeling about me. Now, that's the only point that everybody should agree with. If we can only agree with that point, if you can stay away from people who have a bad opinion of you, that's a pretty good idea. How you know which they are, don't look at every black person and imagine that they're all the same. The most ridiculous thing anybody could imagine is that if I talk about black America, that I ever mean all of them. How could anybody think that? If I say black people like hip-hop music, I don't mean all of them. Like, nobody would talk that way. So when you see somebody say something that's like a global generalization, they're either using a shorthand, and they assume you know it doesn't mean everyone, or they're trying to get you riled up. I was kind of in between those two, a little bit of both.
I think that you needed to do some kind of huge disclaimer on it, Scott, where you're saying, I'm about to say something to try to rile people up. The only thing I'll push back on is, I've read you saying that this was a poll that changed course for you. Rasmussen is not an outlet that we will reference as a polling outfit here or when I was at CNN. Nobody really uses their polls because they're a little notorious for clickbait and doing things just provocative sake. So as I said to you when I spoke to you before, I don't know why you would ever take anything they say as the truth of the matter. But more importantly, when you put the message out there has to be some accountability for it, because you know how fragile our fabric is. And the idea of white people get away from black people, there are a lot of people who really believe that, Scott. And now you are counted among them. How do you counteract that?
Well, Chris, the thing that your audience probably doesn't know, which is the hilarious thing that came out of this, is that it's almost entirely white people that canceled me. It might be entirely, because they're the ones who own the publishing companies and the newspapers.
You don't think that black people were offended? Tell me.
Here, let me tell you. So far, every black person I've talked to, and of course a lot of people contacted me, said that they said, hey, what's going on? And I said, look at the context. They would look at the context and they said, oh, I get what you're saying. That was kind of alarming the way I first heard it, but I get what you're saying. So black America is actually completely fine, both conservative and liberal, if they see the context. White America kind of acts like you. Let's talk about this poll. Why did you say the poll? Why did you say the thing? I just said the poll wasn't important. It was just a jumping off point. And you shouldn't take any of the hyperbole seriously. It was meant to get people riled up. I just misjudged how much. Now, in terms of accountability, I got canceled globally. Have I complained? That's accountability. I haven't complained once. I've simply described it. I did some things. I triggered a series of events. Other people have to be responsible for their roles, but I'm fully responsible for mine. So if global cancellation is my price for free speech, it was worth it. Yeah, I'm probably the only white man in America who has free speech today, because I can say whatever the hell I want, and I can't get further canceled. So I've had this insanely, weirdly good experience out of this that I can't explain. Black people are contacting me and saying, come over to the barbecue, let's talk, and all of these things. But the main goal of all of this was the following reframe, now that I have your attention. And the reframe goes like this.
Scott, let's just do this. Let me take a break. When we come back, give us the reframe. Let's talk about what you see as the problems, but more importantly, while you believe there are solutions, which would be the opposite of anybody believing you want a national divorce or the split of the races. We're back now with Scott Adams. You have been saying that you want to reframe the conversation, that this is not the way you wanted it to go. But I do think that we have to take one step just in terms of the fix before we can get to forward, which is, I understand why you say that it's been mostly white liberals who came after you. But I'm on social media, too. You have plenty of people of color who are pissed about what you said and feel that either you're demeaning it or you're cheapening the situation. Even that thing about I identify as black, that's going to be seen as disrespectful by a lot of people. So you may be getting invited to the barbecue, but do you believe you owe people who were offended an apology?
No, because I did it intentionally. I offended people so that they'd be drawn to the solution. So no. Certainly I don't hurt people for no reason, and I don't think anybody was hurt by saying that I would feel uncomfortable around people who didn't like me. Is that offensive? So here's my experience.
No, it's Chris, the other part.
That when Scott. But the other part is hyperbole. Well, as far as I can tell, Black America, when I talk to them, and I say, well, that was hyperbole, they say, yeah, I know that, and then they talk about the poll. And I find that white Americans won't let go because they have to signal they've got to peacock the situation. But Black Americans were actually just interested. Like, wait, why are you saying this? What's up with this? What's the context? And once I explain the context, it's about how people feel about me. And would you move, let's say, turn it around. If you were black, would you move into a neighborhood that you knew had a high percentage of racists in it if you had a choice? Now, you can't tell who's a racist and who's not, but you're probably going to want to feel more comfortable if you knew there was some zip code with fewer of them in it. Now, there's no practical way that we can separate black and white. Nobody wants to do that. I literally don't know anybody who wants to do that. So that should have been viewed as hyperbole, but I have to admit, because I put a little emotion behind it, it seemed like it wasn't. So probably the energy I put into it changed how people received it. So here's what I'm going to offer. Instead of an apology, which I think does nothing for Black America, I'm going to offer a specific reframe, which is what I do, by the way. That's what several of my books are about. That's what the newest one's about. It's about reframing a situation so you can get out of a mental trap. Now, the mental trap is that we have this worsening racial divide, and I think the problem primarily is that we've monetized racial divide. If you can get more clicks, I mean, this is a perfect example. My situation got lots of clicks, and everybody's like, hey, racial divide, let's get some more of that. I mean, I'm on your show because of racial divide. We've literally monetized racism so that everybody can be a little bit madder at each other. If you monetize racial divide, you're only going to get more of it. I did a poll on Twitter just earlier today. Now, of course, the Twitter poll is highly unscientific, but when it's 9-1, it's telling you a little bit. And 9-1, I asked people, just everybody on Twitter, do you believe that there's there's more anti-white sentiment? There's a trend toward it. And 9-1 said yes. Now, those are mostly people who follow me on Twitter, so it's probably 80% conservatives. Even though I'm not conservative, I'm left of Bernie. But my audience is mostly conservative. So within, let's say, probably mostly white, it was 9-1 feeling that there's a worsening of anti-white behavior. Now, the obvious reasons for that are that there's a backwards-looking philosophy that's taken hold in the country. It's not good for black people. It's not good for white people. It's not good for anybody. And it goes like this. If you're looking backwards at the history of, let's say discrimination, and you're using that as your focus, you can never accomplish anything looking backwards. So I'd like to reframe that to what it would look like to look forward. And the reframe looks like this. The conservatives and black America have one problem in common, which is our school systems are absolutely broken, completely broken, in my opinion. And I think that's an interest where they could work together. They have exactly the same goal, probably more choice, but there are probably other ways to school choice. There's probably other ways to go about it. But if you can get a handle on that, that's number one. So we should not be talking about our differences, and we should not be talking as much about the past. But, by the way, talking about the past is important. So you don't want to lose black history. You don't want to lose the education. But if you're focusing on it, there isn't a single person in the world who knows anything about success, personal or business or any kind of success, who would say that's going to get you a good result. But if you learn to focus on the future using the tools of self-improvement, anybody, black or white, who's low income, as long as they can get that good school, because that's the most important part, they can use the tools of success to slice through systemic racism like it doesn't exist. An example would be, let's say you're a young black kid, but you managed to get a good education. If you go to a Fortune 500 company and say, I'm here to apply for the job, you go right to the top of the list. That's the current situation, because companies are dying to get more diversity. They really need it. So there is a path and a strategy, if you're black, that is really clean, and it'll just take you through systemic racism. You're going to get some cobwebs on you. It's not going to be easy, but you're going to slice right through it. And everybody would have the same possibility. So it's not a black thing. It's just a tools thing. So what I teach is the tools of success. My book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, and my next one coming up, Reframe Your Brain, are all about how to reframe your situation so that you have a forward-looking set of tools. For example, you'd want to Google, if you're trying to figure out what I'm talking about these tools, Google talent stack. That comes from me. Systems better than goals. That's a good thing. You would learn about reciprocity as an operating system for your life. Instead of seeing what you can take, see what you can give. That's a forward-looking philosophy. It's not a backward philosophy. I'm going to give people a bunch of stuff, and then I'm going to, maybe something returns, maybe it doesn't, but that's my philosophy. For example,
so
for years...
Well, hold on, let's do this. We got a ton of people who want to talk to you, Scott. You get this last point, then we'll go to break and get some calls. Go ahead.
So to the point of reciprocity, there were a whole bunch of black people that I've helped personally and professionally over the years. All of them, every one of them came to me privately and said, oh, I see what you said. I'm cool with it. I just want you to know I'm cool with it. That's reciprocity. Now, if you can teach kids how to have these tools, how to build a talent stack that's a set of talents that works well together, not just a vertical, I'm a real good doctor, but I've got a bunch of skills like you and I do. We have a bunch of skills that let us have this conversation, right? So teaching people how to group their skills, have systems instead of just mere goals, and how to have a strategy such as the strategy of maximizing, if you're a black kid, you use the strategy of taking advantage of the fact that corporations want you. They want you badly. So there is a path, but it requires that we stop looking at the past, because I think looking at the past is what makes all these three-letter acronyms so distasteful to white America. And black America needs to know both the costs and the benefits of anything they're doing. Everybody does, right? Just ordinary. And one of the costs is that this backward-looking philosophy of what were the problems, who caused it, who's the demon, who's the victim, just never works. It can't work. It will never work in any domain for any person, except maybe in the short run. And people who work for a living on these programs are going to get paid. And that's about it.
It works
so
great
we got a big
for
problem
people who are in the
Black
business.
America.
It works great for people who are in the business of division.
Great.
And I got to tell you something as we go to break,
right.
because a lot of people want you to answer their calls. I would have had this conversation with you without all that hyperbole BS that you were talking about in terms of the poll and what you want. Oh, yes, I would have. I'm telling you, I would have. I think a lot of people would. But, and I think we'll talk about it more as we go forward. But let's take people's calls. All right, I promised you'd have your say. We're back with Scott Adams, the creator of the comic strip Dilbert. He's been making the argument that he got canceled for what he believes is a just cause, to reframe how the races and our society can move forward together. So, time to have your say. Dusty, who do you got for Adams?
We have a lot of people waiting to get on, and so we're going to start with Florence.
One at a time.
One at a time, and we're going to start with Florence from Long Island.
Florence
Hi,
from Strong
Adams.
Island. What do you got?
Hey, man, how are you? I want to know why everybody is so overly sensitive about what this guy wrote and what he said. I have been reading Dilbert for years, and I don't understand why he's getting canceled because no one took the time to actually understand what he was saying. And I just think it's wrong that we automatically cancel somebody because we don't agree with what they're saying.
Florence, apologize for the question. Wait, hold on, Scott. Scott, I'm going to let you answer. Hold on. But Florence, just for the audience's sake, is it true that you are a black woman from Long Island, New York?
Yes, I am. I am a black woman from Long Island, eastern Long Island in Suffolk County, not far from your house. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's where I live. All right, neighbor, I appreciate
I read it all the time.
Okay, Scott, go ahead. Sorry.
Now, Florence, you sound awesome. Don't you think that if you and I got together, we'd have a good time?
I would.
And my point that I made earlier, Chris, is that so far, every black person that I'm aware of, I can't speak for all black people, but everybody I'm aware of who took the time to look at the context, as Florence did, says pretty much what Florence said. It's only the white people who are mad at me, and only the left-leaning ones, who, by the way, are more like me than dissimilar, because I'm, a super lefty on social stuff.
Well, look, we're going to get another call from Dusty, but I'll give a couple of tweaks. One, again, I've gotten a lot of people who identify as of color, they're black, they're brown, whatever, who did not want me to have you on because they don't think you deserve a platform. So I don't think we should generalize too much, but I'm very open, obviously, to giving you the opportunity, which is why.
Hold on, Chris.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I said the black people. I said the black people who have looked into the
that you've spoken to.
That would be
yes.
That would be maybe right. But that's maybe 20%
I agree with you, but you know what? Here's only one problem with that. You are correct. Okay, I looked into the context, which is why you're on the show, okay? But we are not a look into the context with those kinds of comments, media culture or society. You say something that flips the switch for people as racially insensitive, let alone incendiary, and you're asking for what you got.
Yes, and I'm okay with what I got. I haven't complained about it. But here's the thing that needs to be added to the variables. My part is my responsibility, and what happens for me, no complaints. But you have to understand that the media is monetizing outrage. So a lot of what people heard was Dilbert cartoonist on racist rant. Yeah. If that's your headline, yeah. You know the media, Chris. You know how the media works. Will anything that is said after that help?
No way.
No,
you'll never get down to wherever the balance is. Once you get the headline. Let me get more calls so people don't get mad at me now. Let's get another call for Scott Adams.
Okay, we're going to go with Tom from Tampa, Florida.
Tom, thank you for making the call.
Thank you. Glad to be on. Hi, Chris. Hi, Scott. I have a question for Scott. Scott, how do you respond to the people who take your hyperbole literally and use it to justify their own racist views or actions?
Like I said, I did the hyperbole intentionally because I was trying to rile people up. I didn't expect it to get this big. So I guess I got what I asked for in a sense that I knew people would misinterpret. I knew some would get the right vibe. So none of it's a surprise. If you want to do anything useful in this category, you pretty much have to nail yourself to a cross. And, I didn't think it would come to this. I thought it'd be like one nail, but apparently I got the whole 3 nails.
But to people who are white extremists who are saying Adams is with us, do you want to disabuse them of that notion?
Yes, I disavow all the racists, whoever they are, no matter what color they are. I disavow all racism. Always have, always will. But let me give just a little context. There are plenty of things that I consider racist that I do approve of. For example, historically black colleges feels a little racist. Totally approve. Black History Month feels a little bit racist to some people. Totally approve. Black people should get their own month. Makes perfect sense in light of American history. Take affirmative action. I lost 2 jobs in my corporate life because my bosses told me they wouldn't promote me because the word had come down that they couldn't promote white males. That actually happened in a direct conversation from 2 different bosses at 2 companies. And still, I approve of affirmative action because I went out and got another job and, I was fine. So I've pretty much agreed with a lot of things which, in my opinion, are clearly racially biased in one direction, but there's a lot of good examples of that. I was trying to be a good example by starting out with some outrage, but I'm trying to draw you in to say there's nobody black in this country who won't have a good life if they don't do the same set of techniques that everybody does for success, as long as we fix schools. If you don't fix schools, all the rest is nonsense.
Then there's no starting, there's no launch pad potential. All right, let's take another call. Dusty.
There's nothing.
Okay, we're going to go Wendy from Liberty, Missouri.
Wendy, thank you. What do you have for Scott?
Hello. Thank you. Oh, my gosh, we're going to take it in a different direction. Scott, I am an African-American educator in Liberty, and I'm not going to say where I teach. And as everyone knows, things have been very difficult and challenging for educators across America. I have watched and read your comics for a very long time, and when I saw your video, it was hurtful. I have no other word for it. It was hurtful. So I heard what you said, and I've heard your explanation for the reason for doing it is to just challenge or just jolt people. My question to you is, what am I supposed to say to my students when they see this video? What do I say to my diverse students, my students of color? How do I explain this to them when they see this type of rhetoric being put out on social media? What am I supposed to say?
Well, I would give them so here's the quick summary. I was concerned that there was a lot of anti-whiteness, and I used some, hyperbole, but my purpose was to teach them and anybody else who wants to listen the tools for success. Now, you don't have to listen to my tools. It's not about me. It's not about me selling a book. I'm just saying that everybody needs to get off of the looking backwards frame. If you can move to the looking forwards frame and assemble the tools, which is pretty easy to do, for success, you can have a good life. So that's the message that I'm trying to put forward. And I would tell your students that they have a perfect path to success as long as they get good grades. I'm assuming you're a good teacher, you have a good enough school that they can get a good education. And if they employ strategy and don't look backwards, just strategy, they'll do great. Now, there'll be still way too much systemic racism, but you'll be able to just slice through it like it didn't exist.
All right, one more quick call and then we'll go to break.
Hi, okay, so this is Michael from Detroit, Michigan.
Mike, what do you got for Scott?
Hey, what's up? I don't know what all the outrage is. I've seen what he said, and it just seems like, Democrats can sit there and accuse everybody of being racist with no proof and evidence of it. And I just was wondering why is it so okay for them and nothing is said when they do it, but then somebody of that cartoonist nature says something not even close to that, and everybody's outraged.
Now,
You see
Michael,
it as a both sides thing,
would
Scott?
you imagine? Yeah, well, so here's a question for the audience. If a black man or woman had said exactly what I said, either exactly what I said, or let's say reverse it, and they said, the black version of, I don't want to be around white people because there are too many racists, do you think any black person would be canceled for saying exactly the same thing? Not just the reverse one, not just the black version, but actually what I said, the exact thing, the exact words. Would they be canceled? Everybody knows the answer. It's rhetorical. There's not a chance in the world they'd be canceled. So I wanted as much free speech as Black America. I'm the only one who has it. I'm the only one in the whole, I want to swear, but I won't, in the whole country who can say what I mean and have a productive conversation. I have reframed the whole damn conversation.
Do you not need to use the hyperbole anymore? Forget about regret or whatever, but
no.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, no. It has no purpose. Well, would I do it again to get to this place? I have to tell you, I feel like I'm supposed to be here. It's a weird feeling. Like I never felt bad about getting canceled, and I can't explain that, except that I feel like I was supposed to be here. I feel like the race relations in the country are so broken that you just have to stir up some crap to get anybody's attention and maybe convince them to look forward and maybe work together with people who have exactly the same goals.
One point of absolute cooperation must be that we got to get to a better place. And what I'm not going to do is censor ideas that I know are not one-offs. And there are too many people who are hitting on a lot of the themes that you were for it to be a one-off or an aberration or even hyperbole. There's a lot to be discussed. We got to have more conversation if we want to have more progress. Scott Adams, thank you very much for taking the opportunity. I'm a phone call away whenever you want to talk about what's coming up next and why, or if anything else is being misunderstood. Thank you for indulging my audience and taking their questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.